And I don't know how to explain this, but the clients that I end up attracting or that end up coming to me are just amazing people. Hands down, every single one of them I get are people who are wanting to change their lives for the better. And they understand if they don't right away, they understand pretty quickly that depression, anxiety, these diagnoses that they actually do
Mhm.
have are oftentimes because of all these underlying things, either from their childhood or from unhealthy relationships or dynamics in their life. And we can clear up pretty well or get people in remission from depression and anxiety if we look at the fuller picture.
Today on the Her podcast, we're welcoming Kayla Scheanon, also known as a self-partnered therapist. Kayla is a licensed professional counselor, an entrepreneur, and a mama to two beautiful girls, ages 6 and 5 months. But beyond her professional title, Kayla is a powerful advocate for helping women reclaim their voice, worth, and internal compass. Her life's work centers on what she calls self-partnering, the transformational practice of becoming your own best advocate, your own source of validation, and your own inner guide. Drawing from a personal journey of walking away from emotionally, verbally, financially, and physically abusive environments, Kayla now helps others to do the same, supporting them in their inner knowledge and relentlessly pursuing their lives that they were meant to live. Kayla is the founder of Self-Partnered Therapist and co-founder of the Underground Moves, two spaces that champion radical self-trust, healing, and empowerment. Kayla, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mindy.
Yes, I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me
So
too.
you described your greatest personal achievement as becoming self-partnered. Can you share what that means to you and what that journey looks like?
So self-partnering is something I kind of stumbled upon because I had some very trying things happen in my life that caused me to feel alone and isolated in the relationship I was in at the time, in the marriage I was in at the time, and was very isolated from other people in my life. There was just a moment of something kind of inside me said, you're not alone. You have yourself, you have me. And that was something that happened and then resounded within me and helped power me through leaving that relationship and just making very heart-centered, person-centered choices for myself after that going forward. And so the term self-partnering just again that kind of came to me. It was something that just stuck out, and it's something that I've kept going with over the last 6 years since that time.
Awesome, awesome. So it was kind of like your identifying moment, almost like this
Mhm.
is, I am okay. I can do this.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So was there a defining moment when you knew you had to leave the abusive environments in your life? And then what helped you make that leap?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. There's a couple defining moments, and for some reason, they're all related to being in a vehicle. There was a moment where I was riding back in a car with my husband at the time, and my infant was in the back seat. For some reason, I must have said the wrong thing or tripped his trigger, and he was screaming and yelling, and it was a very volatile car ride. And all I could think was, about my daughter in the back seat and her hearing that and being exposed to that and just knowing, nope, like I have to get out of this experience. There's no way that I can allow her to continue to be exposed to this. So looking back, there's several moments that are like that. And to be honest, there's several moments even before those moments that in retrospect should have been, those defining moments. But I think when you're in that situation, it just takes time to really realize you have to leave. So from that moment on within myself, I was, that blossoming self partnering at that time. I said, you know what? I'm going to get myself and my daughter out of this and away from this. Come hell or high water, I will do that and it will happen. And I just made up my mind to start to kind of collect the resources for myself, which I was very lucky, being a private therapist and having my own business. I was able to have income at the time, and not everybody does have income. Sometimes their income is very controlled. So I hired a self-defense person who helped train me while I was at work for potentially volatile situations. And that also helped my mindset become stronger on the inside. I hired a coach therapist. She was from the UK that specialized in people leaving abusive relationships. So she really coached me through that. And I filed for divorce 12 times and retracted it 11. So she really hung in there with me through that. And I also hired a yoga spiritual practitioner that helped kind of that mind body. It really affects your whole system. So you really need to be able to help your whole system. So a lot of things, including a landlord that I found, to move out into a space. A lot of these resources, I was lucky that they were out there and I was able to find them when I needed them. And just that determination with the self-partnering, all of that came together and really helped me be able to successfully leave that situation.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Don't you think, well, first of all, um, you said that it was your daughter in your car that, was finally like, this is the last straw. I can't do this anymore. And you mentioned that, you had, that there were several looking back,
Mhm.
where probably could have been the trigger and probably could have been the
Mhm.
catalyst going forward. And hindsight is always 2020, right? But don't you think, and talking with different women in these type of situations, is it sometimes the fear of the unknown? It's almost easier sometimes to stay with the devil that you know, right? Because if you
Yeah.
take that step, when you start taking that step, it's scary, right? It's unknown. It's how am I going to do this? And I love that you brought different resources in from all the different areas. I mean, you basically covered the scope, which is fantastic. But do you think that women in this situation, when is it just taking that first step? Is it stepping out and saying, okay, I'm going for this. This is my reason, right? Your daughter was your 100% reason at that point. Do you think it's just that taking that first step that sometimes is just the hardest? Or do you think that as people take that first step, let me reframe that. As people take that first step, do you think some of that self-partnering starts coming in and that confidence starts coming in? Or is this
Yeah.
just such a continuing process?
Every time I tell my clients were a big push for me too, because I looked at that like, okay, here I am a therapist and I'm in this situation. So I was really motivated to get out of it too once I realized what I was in, because you have to practice what you preach.
Mhm.
So something I tell people often is, if you don't have belief in yourself, what you need to do is make one even teeny tiny promise to yourself and keep it. And once you've kept one step or a promise to yourself and you've done it and you've kept it, those start to build, and your trust in your relationship with yourself starts to build, and build and build and build and build. It can be anything. It can be sending that text or making that phone call and saying that's something I'm going to do for myself, and doing it. And then you build. I do want to say too, Mindy, that I do have a lot of males that reach out to me as well. So this is something that's widespread, right? It's
Right.
everybody. We just don't hear from males quite as much because there's so much stigma about that. But abuse is pretty similar no matter what the sex of the perpetrator is. Things really parallel. So you can help anybody once you kind of understand what the needs are. So yeah, I think building that trust in yourself, and it all comes back to that relationship and that self-partnering with self. Once you stick to your commitments to yourself, it really becomes easier as you're going and as you're building.
I love that. I love that it's creating evidence, right? Because when you
Hmm.
have evidence, that evidence becomes truth, right? This is
Hmm.
truth. And you can stand on truth every time, and that's amazing. And when you have that evidence building up, it's phenomenal. And I love how you
The
also
other
go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing I want to mention, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. So, my purpose was my daughter, right? And yeah, a lot of people are stuck because there's a lot of people that their purpose are their children, but they're still in the situation. I think the other thing that my brain did on its own was it thought, okay, there's the unknown and there's the trajectory of all the what ifs with the unknown with the family court system, the unknown with is this person going to harm me permanently if I leave? There's all of that fear, right? And you think about that, and that is what keeps you. My brain did a trajectory of, okay, what's 10 years, 20 years into the future if I stay? And that was more petrifying for me than it was the other
Yeah,
unknown,
right,
because I knew, kind of the dark side, that I knew the trajectory was not good, right? And
right,
it was really, really not good for my daughter. So I think when you look at both sides, and the unknown is there, but what you do know, is bad, like real bad. I think that that can help you make that decision too when you do both, sides of things.
right, right. And that's really important, right? Because you have to look for the future. And sometimes we get so caught up in the here and now that we can't look forward, right? We can't look forward. And I love that. I think I'm 100% with you on that. The looking forward and saying, what does my future self look like? What does this look
Mhm.
like, not only for me, but for my kids and for everything else? What is this going to look like? And is this something that I can live with? And then moving from there. Amazing. So, how do you think becoming a mom influenced your understanding of self-partnering and inner healing?
Um, I think becoming a mom was something that I wanted, and that was kind of a commitment that I kept to self. Like, someday I want to be a mom. And so I became a mom, and now I'm a mom twice over. I have a 6-month-old daughter as well. So, being a mom makes you practice self partnering because you have to carve out the time for your wellness and your self care. It's not that time is just there anymore. You have to really carve it out. I'm someone that I do better when I am busy because I will purposefully carve out time, versus when I wasn't a mom and I had all this time available for me. I probably actually didn't even do as much self care, but I do more now because I have to plan for it. And self care is a big part of self partnering.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important, right? I mean, you have to schedule time for yourself because, that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup is 100% true. And so much more when you have kids, right? I mean, if you're not if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not taking that time to care for yourself, and it's such a great example for your kids, right? You're putting as much value on yourself and your care and what keeps you healthy and strong. That it's just such a great example for them going forward as well.
Yeah. I want them to remember, oh, mom went on a little trip and brought us back these things, and she thought about us. And oh, okay, mom's healthy. She has girlfriends she's spending time with. She's doing these things. I don't want my kids to remember that mom never left the house or never had anything outside of her identity as being a mom. Not that if that's your identity and that's what's important to you, that's okay. For me, though, I want my identity to be even bigger. Like, being a mom is part of it, but there's more too to me as a person.
Amazing. Many women are raised to seek validation externally, right? Whether it's from our parents or our partners or society. Why do you think we're so disconnected from our inner voice?
I think it goes back to when we're young, and this is when I'll turn into a therapist for a minute on you. So when we're little, we are looking, to our parents or our caregivers for reassurance, right? Or just like, hey, what you're doing is good and what you're doing is okay. And I like to give this example of where it can go sideways. So if you imagine that you're at like an old school ice cream parlor and there's all these ice creams available, all the different flavors, Superman, vanilla, chocolate mint, and if you're four, let's say, and the person behind the counter says, hey, what flavor would you like? And as a little girl, I were to say, oh, I think I would like the blue one. Let's do Superman. And my parent says to me, oh, you won't like that. Let's do vanilla instead. That simple example is where it can all go sideways because someone outside of your body says, no, what you're feeling on the inside isn't accurate or isn't what you would like. Let me outside of you tell you what you would prefer better. And in that moment, that's what that child learns is this external voice knows better than the internal voice. And so that is what ends up happening. Okay. And so it's something that little. And then after that point, if the child doesn't fight that, at all, or really speak up, they've subscribed to the messaging of people outside of you determine what is best for you.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it really does all relate back to our childhood, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything starts there. And I think a lot of times it's so hard sometimes to realize that does happen, that every little thing that going forward. But I think, and not only for us, but like, I always think of like my parents and what my parents came through and how my parents, their beliefs so much um made my beliefs, right? I mean, it focused, it shaped my beliefs in so many different things. And as I got older and I started thinking, well, maybe not, it's a struggle sometimes to um to be okay with having my own voice, right? And being okay to being different from my parents and what my parents thought or anybody for that matter. So how do you help your clients recognize when they're abandoning their own selves and how can they start rebuilding the trust of going, you know what, I am okay thinking this or wanting to do this or liking this even though somebody else may not.
So I help them to really tune in to their inner self and, sure, talk about self partnering. That's a great way to do it. Just tuning into your internal self. And if something, I'll teach people how does that choice feel? And if they say, I feel kind of incongruent about it, or I feel kind of weird about it, or not so good, or I hear them saying, I should do that. That's where the joke is. You're shoulding all over yourself. Why are you doing that? But if their inside is a weird, funky feeling about something that we're about to do, is like the alarm sign of hold on a second, something is not in alignment with who you truly are. There's something up there. And then we'll either talk through it, journal it, take some time to reflect on it, and then try to work through, well, what would feel better for you? Once we figure that out, then we deal with what are your fears around doing what you really need to do for you. And that might be where, other people's opinions keep me locked in fear, or, what would my parents think, or whoever it is will come in. And that's where we'll kind of deal with some of those things that are stuck from the past. People that love us shouldn't pressure us or make us feel like we're making the wrong decisions. They should empower us, right? So there's a lot of rebuilding. And what I say to everyone is listen, our parents were doing the best they could. No one's attacking our parents or your parents. Nobody's doing that because they're products of their own environment too. And a lot of our parents did not have access to all of the, I mean, podcasts, right?
100%.
Wellness
Hmm.
things, you know, definitely not therapy. So we're never judging parents, but we're saying, okay, if we're going to help you kind of recalibrate and just reprogram your own data system within yourself, we have to pull out some of the programming that doesn't make sense for 2025, right? And for that person, and we have to input programming of their choosing, of the client's choosing, that is in alignment for them and helps them reach their goals.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And so true, right? I mean, there were so many things you just didn't talk about, right? Growing up, there were so many things you just didn't talk about. And it wasn't because, and I don't even know if, like if you would have brought it up and started talking about it, it was just like it was a non-issue. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It was like, well, we don't talk about this. This is just how it is. It is, I mean, why would you question it? Why would you even want to know why? Right?
Mhm.
It is just
Yeah.
what it is. Do you find that a lot of times too, we have a we have just this way of like projecting, right? We're like, well, I can't do that because this is what somebody would say to me. And so I'm projecting what I think that they would say based on my past experiences. And
Mhm.
half the time, or probably more than half the time, that person isn't even thinking that, right? And I find it like with my husband, I'm always just like, we joke around all the time because, my husband's like, I have a nothing box, right? I have this box where I go into and I don't think about anything. And I'm like, how can you not think about anything? And he's like, no, it's my nothing box. I honestly don't think about anything.
Oh,
But
I love that. I love that.
I can sit there sometimes and be like, well, what are you thinking about this? Or why are you thinking that? It looks like you're thinking this. Your facial expression thinks, what are you upset about? And he's just like, I'm not upset. I'm in my nothing box. Leave me, you know, leave me alone in my
Oh, that's
nothing box. I love that. But I project because I'm seeing something, or I think I'm seeing something, and that causes such it can cause an insecurity if I let that fester. So do you think that's part of it too, is that we are so programmed in what we think we should be doing, right? That should
mhm,
comes on,
mhm.
that we then project onto others unfairly sometimes.
Well, if you think about it from a young age, we're constantly scanning our environment for what we should or shouldn't be doing as females, right? And we're taking that data programming as hardwire programming. And after that happens a certain amount of times as a kid, the same response from your external people, you'll just accept that, oh, that's probably always going to be the response. So I'm just going to let that be where it is. So one of my just kind of on repeat things that I'll say to my clients, but I have to because, and you'll see why, I constantly find myself saying, did you actually ask that person that? Did you say it? And 9 times out of 10, although a lot of them are getting better at it, but 9 times out of 10, they'll say, no, I didn't. I just thought it.
Right.
So some of the work is saying, okay, I want you to go back to that person. I want you to actually say that to them or ask them and share with them. And if it is a male, like a female to a male, the male will say, wow, I'm so glad you brought that up. I never was even thinking that, and those moments create growth and can
Right.
shatter the old programming. It's like, whoa, there's this new experience of this person wasn't thinking, here I was worried about what they were thinking. They weren't even thinking that. So then you need those repeated. You need those repeat new moments of checking in with people that care about us and we care about them, getting the actual information and being able to say, that's different from what I knew before. I am willing to start to work on accepting that, my old fears are my old fears and they don't have to be my present and my current ones.
Amazing. And that builds trust too, right? I mean, that starts to build when you can do that, when you have the ability to go back and actually open that conversation, you are now building a new level of trust, not only with that person, but in yourself. Because now
Mm-hmm.
you have further evidence that you can go back and you can ask those
Mm-hmm.
questions and you weren't hammered for asking those questions. You weren't, it
Mhm.
wasn't a bad experience. It was actually a really good experience for you.
And being self-partnered, you owe it to yourself. You can be self-partnered and be married and be a relationship. Let me just tell you that. Being self-partnered means honoring that voice, that anxious voice inside that says, "Ooh, is this person thinking this about me?" And saying, you know what, let me take you by the hand, Kayla. Let's say my partner says, Kayla, let me take you by the hand. We're going to go talk to this person about this and we're going to find out the actual information. Usually now I've pretty much cleansed my life of unhealthy people and I only have pretty healthy relationships in my life. So people are going to say, "Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Like, let's work through this together." And that just built that self-partnering relationship with myself because I took myself to get the information and I felt better, right? Well, this is where self-partnering is really important. If you go to that other person and they try to gaslight you and they try to make you feel dumb or bad for asking, that's where your self-partner's job really comes in and says, does that feel good? Does this response from this
Yeah,
person feel good? And does this person make sense to keep in my life? If they're going to treat me like that. And I think we always need that internal voice or that internal partner, because relationships can change, friendships can change, business relationships can change, marriages can change. But you owe it to yourself to always just kind of be that internal moderator of, does this make sense for me to continue doing?
amazing. And I love that how you said that relationships can change because the fact of the matter is it's okay that they do. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay that, like you mentioned, you only have, a couple people that you allow to speak into your life. And I'm the same way, right? I have my little bubble of people that I allow to speak into my life. And in that, in so many ways is such it's a safety, right? Because I know who I can trust. And then, but it also gives me something where when I'm building a new relationship, I know what I want and I'm secure in what I want. So if I do get gaslit or I do feel like it's not 100% as I'm building that relationship, it's okay also to put a border on that relationship and be like, you know what? We're only going to be here and we're not going to go to that next level, and I'm okay
Mm-hmm.
with you just being here. And I think, as a people pleaser person, right, it was really hard to get to that point of being like, you know what, it's okay that I have my bubble. It's okay that I'm only, these are the people that I trust and these are the people I allow to speak into my life, and it's okay that I have another section or level of friendship with these people out here, and it's okay that they stay where they are, that not everybody has to be in my bubble, right, in my little
Yep.
circle.
Yep. And you reserve the right to bump them in and out, as far as the
Right,
circles go in our life. Those outer layer of circles might be people in the community or might be, people that we just kind of know, right? But the people
right,
that we move into our inner circles, we have an ability to move in and out and in and out based on how and the quality of our relationship, in each given moment.
right,
Absolutely.
right. And it's okay. And I think just knowing that it's okay is a huge weight off your shoulders, right? When you can sit there and
Hmm.
go, it's okay that this is like this. It's okay, for my own mental, spiritual health, well-being, for all of the things, it's
Hmm.
okay that I keep this person here. So you mentioned that one of the things that you did was you were like, okay, I need to bring in all of these different people for all of these different parts of my life, and one of those was the yoga and the spiritualness on that, and so with trauma, especially from like an abusive relationship, as a health coach, I see how trauma can manifest in a person's health, right? I mean, because
Hmm.
it's got to manifest some way, right? It's got to come out, right? So how do you show that trauma, especially from an abusive relationship, impacts a woman's health, hormones, or sense of self?
It's just it's so holistic how it affects us, right?
Right.
So it can manifest into illnesses that, and you're probably the expert on that. So when I have somebody that comes in and maybe they're coming in because they're having a lot of panic attacks, but they're not telling me about any trauma history because they're not able in that moment to identify, yeah, trauma has happened to them. So we'll really start to explore dynamics of relationships, things that they've been through, and usually, eventually, we can detect where some trauma might have happened in their kind of external life, right? And then I make sure that I'm sending people to health specialists, wellness specialists for those symptoms that are arising, you know, chronic pain, um, all kinds of issues, thyroid. I mean, you name it, it will manifest into the settle into the body. One of my favorite books is The Body Keeps the Score. Have you ever read
Yeah.
that book?
Yeah.
I
Amazing.
love
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah.
And I have at my office, I have a wonderful somatic healing specialist that comes twice a month, and she does an hour of trauma release yoga with my clients. And really, anybody could come. It's a safe space. It helps them kind of release using specialty sorry, yoga moves. She's just wonderful and an expert at that kind of stuff. And of course, I'm going to send people over to you now that I have a better understanding of what you do, you know. But absolutely, it affects the whole person.
Yeah, 100%. And and so many people, don't realize, that this is actually this is why I'm feeling like this. And again, it goes back to just digging in and finding out what that root cause is, and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to deal with that root cause on all the different planes and all of the different circles in our life that is so important. You mentioned fusing self-partnering with listening to your internal system. What role does the body play in guiding us, especially through healing?
So your body, you know, if you're carrying all this muscle tension and you're carrying all this tension in your body, which people won't realize when they are, that's like a big indicator that there's something emotionally going on that you're carrying, you know? So the body will send out all of these signs, these different signs and illnesses, and if our immune system is down and if we pick up on that, we can get people help, but not just for the physical, but we need to get them help for the mental and the spiritual as well. Have you ever heard of the ACEs, the adverse
Yes.
childhood?
Hmm.
Okay. So ACEs I use in practice, and you know, people don't realize, but even their family doctors are doing an ACEs score on them
Right.
oftentimes. And that looks at adverse childhood events. But obviously there can be adverse events throughout the whole life system, but it's 1 to 10. And the higher your score is that you get on that, the more likely you are our medicine doctors that aren't always holistic, they're using this instrument that will tell them the likelihood of someone developing heart disease or someone having a heart attack or having a huge medical event. They use it to determine, I wonder how long this person's lifespan is going to be. So ACEs is something that your listeners could even do on themselves. They could look it up, they could do their ACEs score themselves, and they could bring it to any of us, right? Any of these think wellness people and kind of talk about it and say, I don't want my adverse childhood number or events to determine my health now at whatever age I am. And I don't want it to determine an early death, for example. I want to overcome this. I want to be the difference here. I don't want to be the person that follows the projection of the ACEs score and what it means.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting that you brought up doctors. I was a insurance agent for before I stepped into the health coaching space. And with life insurance, one of the things that they look at when they're looking at that medical records and they're pulling those medical records is that. And
Wow.
um, they will often rate you according to that, right? Because they can actually tell, and they project out with their actuaries, they can actually tell what your life expectancy is. And that is, I think, one of the most, I mean, that's powerful, right? I mean, that's powerful. If somebody is saying to you, you know what, I believe you got 30 years left in you, and you're 20 years old, and you're like, wait, what? What are you talking about? And
Yes, yeah.
the insurance company is like, yeah, I'm only going to insure you for this long. Then that should be such a huge wake up call of why is this? Is it and then we got to start working on that health, and we got to start working on the physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And so many people, I think, get forget that the mental and the spiritual part is so much a part of their actual health, and they don't realize that connection. So amazing. um for a woman or anybody, right? Because I 100% agree that men suffer as much as women do in these abusive relationships. So when we're stuck in a survival mode, right? When we get in these survival modes and our cortisol levels are so up, and we are just in that fight or flight 100% all the time. What's one small way that we can begin to reconnect with our body and our inner wisdom?
Two ways I like to employ. So we have our right and our left side of our brain. And oftentimes when we're stuck in fight or flight, we're kind of stuck over in our right side of the brain. Left side's going to be your logic and reasoning. And if you're kind of wanting to get back over to that side, which most of us do, no one likes to be in panic or fight or flight. One way to do that is to yourself start to think of factual things such as your street address or your telephone number or what day it is, who the president is, whether that makes you happy or sad, stuff like that, and really focus on some factual things and even write the facts down. That helps switch over what part of the brain you're using. And then the next step after that I like to employ is any kind of grounding technique. So if you're like me, you like to be near water. So you're going to go put your feet in the water or your hands in the water. I'll even go into the bathroom and splash my hands in water if I'm not able to go to the lake or a beach or something like that. You can ground by going and putting your feet on the earth, taking your shoes off and going and grounding and spending some time. And
Yeah,
then once you do those things, you can do some affirmations of, I am safe right now in this moment. Things like that. Mantras or affirmations are very, very helpful to us also. But those are just a couple of the things that I use and I like to teach.
amazing. So I have a lot of people, a lot of times I'm a big one in journaling. I think that and as a full disclosure, I have my times where I'm like, oh, I'm journaling everything. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot I didn't journal, right? But I notice
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference of when I journal and when I don't journal. So I'm a huge believer in gratitude journaling, but I'm also a huge believer in evidence journaling. And that's where, like you were saying, getting out of that fight or flight and looking at what's a fact, right? And so a lot of times I'll be like, write down what you know to be true, so that when
Mhm.
you are in your thoughts are out of control or your emotions are out of control, you can just simply pull that evidence journal out and start reading what is true. And yeah, it
Yeah.
clicks you over to, okay, it is okay. I am okay at this point because this is what's true. My thoughts are a little bit out of control right now. And so, but this is what is true for me. And I know that this is
I
true.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so you've built businesses while healing, parenting, and standing in your truth, right? So what lessons have
Yes.
you learned through entrepreneurship that also applies to personal growth?
One thing I will say is people will say, shouldn't I get out of my situation before I start something like a business? And for me, the answer was no, because it's good to build new, healthy, positive things because it will help be what pulls you in the direction of your future. So you can take one step at a time. If you have a beautiful idea that you got, start it broke, start it when you're in fear. Start it when you're in abuse, right? And go ahead and do that. So that's like a big lesson that I learned, and it's proven to be very helpful. When I was, I collected all those resources for myself when I was leaving my situation. And then something that came out of that was I now have, it's a domestic violence resource. It's a secret app that can go on survivors' phones that has access to survivors and their mode of practice. So it has therapy, which right now is me as a therapist that's been a survivor, but can also help with special therapeutic practices to help people leave abusive relationships and really heal and recover and thrive afterward. It has self-defense on the app. It has a peer, a specific designated peer to help coach people. It has housing resources
Wow.
and court advocacy and things like that. So all of these things that helped me threw on an app, got connected with an amazing tech company that helped make all those dreams a reality. And now it's currently I go to businesses and I say, survivors are not able to purchase this oftentimes because their finances are controlled and they don't want to give away to their potential abuser that they're leaving. So employers will sponsor the app for their employees so that way it goes undetected and then we can
Wow.
put it on their phones, at their place of work, and then help them behind the scenes after that. It's called underground moves, and that idea came from, my moves had to be all underground in terms of strategy, and that worked. So I said everybody should have access to these things that I was able to buy. Everybody should be able to have access to that. It should just be a no-brainer. So I started to build that obviously while I was still leaving. And I can't tell you how good it feels to be able to say, like, we've helped a lot of people through this and are going to
Wow.
continue to do that and continue to grow underground.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And not only, I mean, what a huge resource, but I love how you have everything in the app because when somebody is going through all of that, they may
Mhm.
not have the brain power to be thinking, oh, I also have to do this. Oh, what about this? What about this? And to have those resources right there is so amazingly powerful to just help guide, right? And don't forget about this. And that's amazing. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
I love that employee that you go to the employers and talk to them that way. And huge kudos to the employers who work with you and
Yeah,
allow that.
there's so many workplaces that want to be safe workplaces and they
Mhm.
want their employees to be healthy. So that's wonderful and it's neat to be able to see that. And then of course I encourage people to go get jobs those places because I know that those are supportive, safe work environments.
Right, right. Wow. Okay. So what has self-partnering changed the way you show up in your professional life and the kind of people that you attract? Or how has it?
Well, I definitely build my schedule in a way that is healthy for me. And that's changed over the years depending on what I needed. In the field of mental wellness, you could probably work 24 hours a day, every day, right? So, there are times where it makes sense for me to work in the evenings and have the mornings more free, or it makes sense for me to work the weekends but have a couple weekdays free. So, by really checking in with myself, it helps me to build a schedule that's healthy for me and healthy for the girls too. So that's been nice. And I don't know how to explain this, but the clients that I end up attracting or that end up coming to me are just amazing people. Hands down, every single one of them I get are people who are wanting to change their lives for the better. And they understand if they don't right away, they understand pretty quickly that depression, anxiety, these diagnoses that they actually do
Hmm.
have are oftentimes because of all these underlying things, either from their childhood or from unhealthy relationships or dynamics in their life. And we can clear up pretty well or get people in remission from depression and anxiety if we look at the fuller picture.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it happens, but I get wonderful people. They're all motivated for change. And those are the clients that I like to have, the ones that are motivated for change. Because you probably know this, but you're not going to make another person want to change. It needs to
No.
be intrinsic in there, you
Right.
know?
Right. And I think that's one of the hardest things I think that to come to begin with, especially when you're coaching or you're a therapist or whatever, is you can't want change for somebody more than they want it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they have to say, okay, I'm ready for this. And I love that, I'm a full believer of the people that are coming to you are the ones that are supposed to come to you, because I think that everybody has somebody that is their person, right? That they go to for help and stuff. And yeah, that the ones that you attract are the ones that you're supposed to help. And that's amazing. What is one belief or mantra that has carried you through the hardest season?
Are two. One is something that just kept repeating in my head throughout the last 6 years on its own, and it's I can and I will. So it just pops in anytime that I'm struggling and I'm like, how am I going to get through this obstacle or this hurdle? Because there's been plenty, plenty, plenty,
Mhm.
plenty. And it just comes in and says, I can and I will. Oh, there's three. The second one is in Still I Rise. I have it tattooed on my arm. That's a Maya Angelou quote from one of
Uh-huh.
her most popular poems. It's a beautiful one if you ever want to look it up. And Still I Rise. So it's just, and still I do, and still I do. So we're always rising from these things that come our way. And I believe they come our way to help us make even more aligned self-partner choices for ourselves. So contrast is going to show up in my life, and I'm going to meet it with I can and I will, and I'm still going to rise through it. The third one, a good friend of mine, she was a woman a couple decades older than me, and she had left an abusive relationship and moved across the country and was really thriving, ended up getting her doctorate and just doing really amazing things and raising two kids on her own. She would say to me, Kayla, I want you to always remember that we can do hard things.
Yes.
And so I just repeat that one in my head, and she's so special to me. And so I think, even when times are hard, like that's when we have to say to ourselves, okay, but I can do hard things.
Right. Right.
It's okay that it's hard. I can do hard things. So
Right.
those are the three.
I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. I love all of those. Those are amazing. And yeah, I think one of mine is you're stronger than you think, right? Because you've survived 100% of whatever you've come through. You've survived that,
Yeah.
and that's amazing and fantastic. Oh my gosh, I love that. If a listener is feeling trapped, whether in a relationship, job, or mindset, what would you say to them today?
Find one person, whether it be a therapist, a friend, the person at the grocery store that you can connect with and tell what you're going through, at least a little bit, because that one connection could build more connections for you. In the times that I felt the most alone, that's what it was. It was like, I remember these wonderful people at the Dollar General that I would always go to, and you could get a little connection from those people. And I'm still close with those people. So even when we're alone, if you lift your head up and you look around, there are loving people out here, and they might not be your family. They might not be who you're married to or your best friend for all your life. It could just be somebody else out here in the world. That's the first thing I would tell them. Start to build slowly those connections. The other thing I would say is look within. You have this partner within that we oftentimes will disconnect from, especially during abuse, because it's too painful to feel our feelings. So we'll disconnect from our feelings and ourself, and we'll really dissociate with trauma. So reconnect with self and see if you can find that partner within that says, I'm still here, I'm still in here, and we can get through this.
Right. Beautiful. What is one takeaway you hope every listener walks away from after hearing this conversation?
I hope that everyone, if there's something that they're trying to get out of or triumph over in their life, knows that there's probably a reason that that's showing up in your life, and you are going to overcome it. You will. There will be a day where you'll be at the top of your mountain looking down and you'll say, "Whoa, how did I get up here from way down there?" And it's one step at a time. So even though you can't look down from the top of the mountain right now, there will come a day that you will. You just have to take one small step at a time and trust your partner within that you are being guided to go where you need to.
Powerful, powerful. I love all of that. I love all of that. All right. So thank you so much. We are at time. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story, your heart, and your wisdom with us. Your message about self-partnering and the power of listening within is such an important reminder for everybody, especially those on a journey of healing and rediscovery. Before we wrap up, can you let our listeners know where they can find you, follow your work, or connect with you for support?
If someone needs underground moves, you can reach out to www.undergroundmoves.co. Underground Moves is on Instagram. You can message us on Instagram if you need help. I have a page also called The Self-Partnered Therapist. That's on Instagram. And there's a website. If you Google The Self-Partnered Therapist, you can message me through any of those means as well. And of course, anybody is welcome to reach out to me at the office in downtown Conneaut Lake also. So please let your listeners know they can contact me in any of those ways. And if I can help, I certainly will.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Take
To all of you listening, remember this: you are your own greatest advocate, your own source of strength, and you are wonderfully and beautifully made. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and visit www.mindycurtishealthcoach.com to take the free toxicity quiz and schedule a complimentary 30-minute consultation. Until next time, stay empowered and keep listening.